everybody, and welcome back to T3 Presents I'm My Life as an RPG, and we're going to talk about fighting games. I'm here with Ghoul.
That's me.
Stray Housepet.
That's I.
And CFX from the community.
Hello there.
All right. And today's topic is going to be, are fighting games video games? And before you immediately start typing the comments, I feel like we need to actually, discuss what we're talking about.
Yeah, what does that question actually mean? Because there's more to it than it seems.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Fighting game community, calm down. But there are certain things that we expect video games to have when released in the year 2024. And fighting games, kind of now and historically in many times, did not necessarily have those things. Things like working online multiplayer, things like working offline multiplayer, things like any single player content, thing like just take anything that you would expect from like an FPS,
variety
an
of game
RTS.
modes.
Yeah, and then look at fighting games and say, are they doing the same thing? And there's been this thing that we've been talking about, ever since the release of a couple different video games. We're like, wow, this fighting game is a full video game, because I feel like the fighting game community is so used to just accepting fighting games in whatever state that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, there are a lot of different games that have this to more or less extent. But even games that I love, like Skullgirls, right? Skullgirls released without a move list, and that was not a good idea. Rollback netcode is another really great example. The fighting game community treats rollback like it's this brilliant new innovation, right? And you know what game had rollback in the 90s? Doom had rollback in the
90s. Yes.
You have to be lying.
They
are not lying.
Here. Stray, you're the resident Doom lover here. Back me up.
He's right.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Doom
He's
multiplayer in the 90s had rollback netcode. Yes.
I have been playing BlazBlue since 2009. And it hasn't had fucking rollback since 2022. What are we talking about? Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I'm going to tell this story real quick, right? When the first-person shooters got online play, right? The very first netcode that was tried out with them was rollback netcode, right? Or like a version of rollback. Sorry, the first version of netcode that they tried was the lay-based netcode, and it didn't work, because if you had 4 people in a game, right, and your command had to go out to 4 different people over a dial-up connection, because remember, this was out in the times of dial-up, the game no work, right? So they came, and we didn't even call it wasn't even called rollback back then, right? But they were like, how do we do this? How do we fix this? And it was just run each game alone, and then when they desync, catch them up with each other. That's why when you were, playing Doom against your friends, sometimes your friends would be stuck doing a little quarterback dance and then would teleport across the screen. That's rollback. That's rollback in the 90s. Yeah, that's what it was doing. So, shooters.
I mean,
I'm 90% sure. I'm 90% sure it had that on the Super Nintendo too.
Yes,
because that was the only way. That was the only way they could do it.
Yeah, like you see it in modern games now.
They all had it.
If you play any online, I mean, it's most prevalent in like first-person shooters, but really like any online multiplayer game where you might experience rubber banding, where you get to a point and then you snap back to where you were like a second ago, that's that's the effective rollback netcode, or at least
Yeah.
some sort of version of rollback netcode. And
Some type
so
of derivative, at least.
yeah. And so the fact that literally every other genre of game in the world has incorporated this type of netcode before fighting games, and we're just now excited about it in when did Strive come out? 2020?
Yeah.
Over the past 4 years, we've been experiencing an influx of this netcode that everybody else has been using for literal decades, like literally longer than I've been alive. And it says a lot to
Baby cool.
Oh.
Hey, I'm 26, okay?
Fuck.
Oh shit! It really has existed longer
Yes.
than you've been alive. How have we?
I hate
How have
this.
we've failed to update our games for an entire ghoul.
Yes.
How did
For an
that
entire
happen?
goal.
When did Doom multiplayer come out? Because I was born in 1997.
And before that.
So yeah.
Doom's like 93, 94.
Right, yeah.
Dude is barely older than me. What the fuck?
So, and it says a lot for us to be getting excited about it now, right? Because there's something that happened to fighting games that tempered the expectations of the people who play them, that made I'm going to say us, because we've dealt with it for the past however many years we've been playing fighting games, that it made us okay with it. You know, we would get these games with like poorly functioning online, limited single player content. I mean, like you said, RPG, Skullgirls launched with no move list. You could not look up what your character's moves were in Skullgirls when the game launched.
Yep.
And we were just okay with that. Like, we were okay enough to keep playing. Like, maybe we complain about it or whatever, but we would still buy the game. We would buy the next game. We'd buy all the DLC. We'd host tournaments. We'd go to tournaments. We'd play online. And we were complacent is the best word I can think of.
And then we wonder why it doesn't get reviewed well and why everybody thinks it's a bad game.
Right, exactly.
Right?
We
Like,
wonder
we're
why
very tunnel vision, you know.
we
very
wonder why
tunnel
nobody wants to
vision
play
that way.
fighting games with us.
Yeah. So that's kind of like the history, you know, of where we're coming from when we say this. Before we go on and talk about like individual games that may or may not have a problem in recent days, I do kind of want to just get people's opinions on sort of like what this is, you know, where we stand here. I will say, I was gonna come in with a more tempered opinion, but I'm going to say largely no after February, and I will reveal that why as the podcast goes on. But I was wondering how everybody else was thinking.
I think that fighting games, you know what? I have a nuanced opinion. I think fighting games are video games, even after the results of fighting games are video games now, even after the February we just had, because the current state of the games industry makes it so that all video games launch unfunctional.
Oh, interesting. That's a good one.
The AAA gaming industry has sort of met us in the middle here this past February.
I think fighting games are arcade games struggling to hit the modern field. And also I think fighting games are doing better than other arcade genres in that trying to survive in a modern world, despite the flaws that we have. Because what are beat 'em ups doing these days? We got like Shredder's Revenge, which was cool, but like,
I mean, Streets of Rage 4 was real good. Okay.
All right.
But when did that
but
come out?
Then you also get like shoot 'em ups, right? And then like, so
Yeah, I
like
got nothing
fighting
for
games
that.
are falling. Fighting games are falling behind when it comes to rollback netcode or having a VSync feature in their menu. But I think they're significantly ahead in terms of single player content and more having more stuff to do than other game genres that came out of the arcades.
I mean,
so I think they are video games.
Not to derail too much, but don't you think that the evolution of the shoot 'em up would end up being something like the idle shooters that we have now, stuff like Vampire Survivor, Rotato, like those types of games, or like the roguelike bullet hell stuff, like the Binding of Isaac, Enter the Gungeon. I mean, I wouldn't consider Hades a shoot 'em up, but it's like still that type of game.
Nah, it depends on your weapon. In
Yeah, it
Hades,
depends on the
but,
weapon you pick. Yeah, but to me,
I can
and
see
like
it.
maybe it's
I
just
can
ignorance
see
on my
that,
part,
but maybe I'm a purist when it comes to shoot 'em ups.
Maybe you are,
I'm
and that's
thinking
fine.
because I'm thinking like the scrolling shooters,
right?
right?
Yeah,
Oh, like some like Galaga and like
Yeah,
Yeah,
Raiden
like some
and stuff.
Galaga stuff like that.
It's actually
I don't
kind of
know.
interesting that you
I
say,
do like
you know,
Raiden.
where are beat 'em ups? Because the answer to that is beat 'em ups became God of War, right?
Yeah,
like
actually.
like the pure beat 'em ups, you know, like kind of faded. So yeah, you're not seeing a whole lot of arcade beat 'em ups, but the way that the beat 'em up transitioned into the modern era was they became the character action game. They became God of War. They became Devil May Cry. You know.
Yeah. So I guess part of the question there is like, do arcade games matter still?
Hmm.
Ugh.
Well, I think
that's where I'm at.
I think that's more of a cultural thing, right? Because I feel like arcades are in the West aren't really so prevalent as they are kind of like in our Eastern counterparts, right? Like,
And even
I
that's
feel like-
starting to fade. It's
exactly.
Yeah, no,
so it's like
the pandemic did a number on the arcade scene.
mhm.
Steve,
I
what
think
about your
that-
opinion
oh,
on
yeah,
this?
go for it.
Oh, go ahead.
I believe that it's like this is so like centrist, but it's like it's a game by game basis. Like some fighting games are video games, and some aren't.
that's
like,
a fair point.
Mhm.
I personally really enjoy DNF Duel, but it is not a video game.
It sure ain't.
Like, it is not a video game.
There's some
BlazBlue
people
is
you
a
would
video
not tell
game.
that to.
And you know what? They're going to listen to this podcast and they're going to be like, man, I can't believe you just said that in front of thousands of people. But I believe it's a game by game basis because it really is dependent and contingent on the team and what they really want their vision of that game to be. Like, for instance, like let's just say my favorite fucking fighting game, BlazBlue. BlazBlue has a lot of single player content in BlazBlue. They have Speed Star mode, they have Time Attack, they have Score Attack, they have 3 different acts for every single character. That's a lot of single player content.
That is a lot,
for
actually.
just for a fighting game. And they have the Abyss mode, so that's another one. So it's like they have so much. But then again, just as the most recent game that has kind of fumbled its bag, DNF Duel, they had survival, arcade, cool,
and story mode, right?
and well, which was pretty much arcade mode.
Yeah,
honestly.
yeah. Because they had
Like,
individual character stories, right? That you did like five fights
Exactly.
and got an ending, like traditional arcade. mode.
Exactly, which is just an arcade mode, which
Yeah.
doesn't give any nuance. And then again, kind of thank you for bringing that up because BlazBlue also had a story mode, so then you can just sit and watch what's actually happening, and then
Yeah.
you had the little fights in between. So it's just like there are some video games or sorry, some fighting games that are video games for sure, but then I just don't understand why people don't kind of like look outward when they're developing these things and be like, oh, like that's a kind of cool feature that maybe we should implement in our own way in our own game, but they never do, and it's just kind of like the bare bones bullshit, and it's exhausting at times.
I mean, it's hard to
You know?
have this discussion without talking about Street Fighter V, right?
Mhm.
Because that game launched. I don't even remember what year. Was it 2015?
16?
2016? That game came out.
Let me do a quick little
Yeah,
Google
like,
check.
do a quick
Alan, can we Google that?
Yeah.
2016.
2016, Street
Yep.
Fighter V came out. Okay. That game launched with no arcade mode, no story mode. What was it? Was it 16 characters or was it
Mhm.
Yeah, it was 16 characters because Street Fighter 6 launched with 18.
Mhm.
And it was missing a lot of staples, right? Like that game did not launch with Guile in it.
Yeah, that was crazy
which
back
is
then.
insane.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
Guile is DLC in Street Fighter 5.
Right.
Okay, think about that. But the only thing to do in that game was either training mode, online fights, or the survival mode. That's it. That's all there was. They added story mode later, and it was bad, but that's neither here nor there. They added it. And they added arcade mode with a title update when the game became Street Fighter V Arcade Edition. That's when they added the actual arcade mode.
That's
and
what
then-
arcade edition means.
Yeah, and then they later on it became Championship Edition, which is, the
Yeah.
version that's current.
Mhm.
Which on top of that, it took them 2 years to make Arcade Edition. It took them 2 years to put an arcade mode into Street Fighter V. Like
And
almost to the month, like a month shy, so 11 months.
And think about
So
knowing that,
23
knowing all
months.
of that, think about how wildly successful Street Fighter V was, especially like within the vacuum of the FGC.
Mhm.
It was the game. It was Street Fighter V
Yeah.
is the game that pushed fighting games into the esports sphere alongside other genres. A lot of people give that credit to Street Fighter 4, but I don't, because Street Fighter 4 was still very much within our
It was still a
vacuum.
garage scene. Yeah,
It was still grassroots stuff. Street Fighter 5 was the game that put us on ESPN with
Mhm.
Street Fighter League and got us these huge sponsors, put us out on huge events. Street Fighter 5 was the game that pushed us into esports, and it launched with no content
It's
other
kind of
than the
interesting.
battle system.
It's kind of interesting because, like, I remember when it released, like, I literally had the thought, well, what am I going to do? Not play it? You
Right.
know, like,
Exactly.
and like
Yeah.
you think, like, yeah, no, I could just not play it, but it's like, but that's literally what the whole FGC was like. It's like, well, I guess,
What else
you
were you gonna
know.
do? Try to talk people into playing Xrd?
yeah, like,
It's like,
Maybe.
and I don't want to come off as like, because I do like Guilty Gear Xrd. I don't want to come off that I don't, but
I do want to preface something.
Yeah, but
right?
have you ever
It's gonna sound-
experienced Dustin?
It's gonna sound a lot like we're shitting on these games, but on the contrary, most of these games we love, right?
Yeah.
I'm not
I
gonna say
love Street Fighter 5.
100% of them we love, but like, most of these games, I love BlazBlue, I love Skullgirls, I love Street Fighter. I like these games. It's just, it's really interesting when you look at them outside of the vacuum of the FGC, right?
Yeah.
And so this isn't just like a shit on this game party. I think part of, usefully criticizing a genre is seeing where it has excelled and where it hasn't. And I think BlazBlue, actually, when CFX was bringing this up, is a really good example of a game that has all this content. Like, I would say BlazBlue is a video game, but it only recently got rollback, right? And I do kind of feel like games that are multiplayer games not having rollback, in the modern day is unthinkable. And I actually kind of believe it was unthinkable before Strive. Like, everyone was like, oh, Strive normalized it, right? Looking from the perspective of outside the fighting game community, we should have had rollback standard in the year 2000.
Look at the games that came before Strive that did, right? Skullgirls, fantastic netcode.
Mhm.
Every Mortal Kombat game that had online, it's like those Mortal Kombat, like, love it or hate it, was the shining star of the fighting game online experience.
Killer Instinct.
Killer Instinct. What was that? 2010.
Mhm.
That game has fantastic netcode. Still to this
Battle
day,
for
like,
the Grid.
it still holds up against current games netcode.
Right.
Battle for the Grid when did Battle for the Grid come out? I don't actually know.
2019,
2019.
Mhm.
Okay.
the year before Strive.
Yeah, the year before.
Yeah,
Strive,
year before Strive, yeah.
And Battle for the Grid is an indie game.
Well, like even Injustice 2 had it,
Injustice 2, yeah. Injustice 1 or 2,
So,
Injustice 1 and Injustice 2, excellent online experiences, and NRS is fantastic in terms of like the single player experience too. Even if you don't like the NRS combat system, which, you know, some people like it, some people don't. NRS games have a lot of single player content. They have good online. They have a lot of stuff you can do. They have a lot of game modes. They have good training modes. They give the player a lot of information just inside the move list. MKX was the game that I learned what frames were, because when I looked at the move list, it told me the frame data for the move. And so I was like, what does this mean? And then I started doing, my digging and figured it out. That's how I learned.
Most games
PlayStation also. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Most games don't even have the frame data of moves still.
Yeah, still.
Yeah.
I mean, like Street Fighter 6 has it, right? But you have to turn on a bar to look at it, right? It doesn't have it just listed on the move.
Yeah, it doesn't have it inside the move list. As far thinking about it, Mortal Kombat is the only game I can think of off the top of my head, and I could be wrong, someone could correct me, but Mortal Kombat is the only game I can think of that does, when you scroll on a move in the move list, tell you the frame data of the move.
Yeah, I can't think of another one
inside that menu. Which is so cool, right? And I mean, Strive started doing a cool thing where it gives you like a short description of the move and like what it's used for, which I think is also super cool. And then it has like the little video that plays that shows you what the move looks like, so that when you execute the move, you can tell whether you're doing it properly, etc. And all of that stuff is super great. But yeah, just giving information to the player is a huge thing too. But yeah,
I mean, who wants to mention the elephant in the room, considering the games that we mentioned right now? Should I do it?
I'm not sure which one. There's a few elephants in this room.
Every single game you have mentioned was made in the US. And every single game, that we're talking about otherwise is Japanese made, right?
Yeah.
And that a lot of that does come down to, development culture, right? Because like in a way we knew, like, the reason why Killer Instinct had rollback in 2010. Yes, CFX? You're lighting up here. Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Killer Instinct got rolled back in 2013.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
You know who got rollback before that?
What?
Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Okay, so I'm gonna.
You know what also got rolled back before that in 2008?
What?
Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix.
Yeah, because that just used GGPO, right?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess what that.
All right. If we're gonna go down that line, basically every game that was like a retro release for the 360 had rollback. Because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the 360 and PlayStation 3 had rollback.
It did.
Street Fighter Third Strike Online Edition had rollback.
Yes.
Both made by Iron Galaxy, who worked on
made by
Killer
Iron
Instinct.
The American studio who worked on Killer Instinct.
Man, did you know Mega Man Battle Network has rollback before Dragon Ball FighterZ?
That's so tight.
Isn't that funny?
It's an important function.
I love Mega Man Battle Network.
Dude, that game was peak. But sorry, I got distracted again.
But yeah, so Capcom, I have to give credit where credit is due, right? Capcom in the 360 PS3 era did give their games rollback. I mean, technically Street Fighter V has rollback. It's just not good. It's poorly implemented.
I mean, technically Tekken 7 has rollback, and people constantly forget about that.
So Tekken 7 is an interesting case because that was a game that's not retro, that was retrofitted with rollback netcode. Yes. That game did not launch with rollback netcode. It was given rollback netcode during its lifespan. Which I can't think of another game that's happened to yet because it hasn't happened for Dragon Ball Fighters yet.
Yeah.
BlazBlue.
I mean, yeah, it depends on what your cutoff for retro is.
Oh, are you talking about retro or just lifespan? Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Um,
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, hold
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
I thought it happened to a bunch of ArcSys games.
Is that
Yeah, but
like,
I think he was more talking about the retro factor.
Like,
Would you consider BlazBlue retro? I don't.
not Central Fiction. I'd
No.
barely consider Plus R retro.
Really?
I can
Can't think
Plus
of
R.
not.
Plus R is a retro game.
All right,
I
hold on.
consider Plus R
What's the
retro.
release? What's the release dates? Hold on.
I'm just
getting my
smiling
guilty-
at the
I'm getting my
at the
gears of
clash
the guilty
personalities here.
mixed up.
but,
Okay,
like-
Plus R was 2 titles old by the time it got rollback.
Oh, okay. I'm
More
getting
than
it mixed
that
up.
because there were several versions of Xrd before, like between Plus R and Strive.
Yeah, like when the hell did that come out?
Okay, you're right. What's the game I'm
Yeah, like
thinking?
2000?
What's the game
24
before
years
Strive?
ago?
I'm
Come on,
sorry.
boys.
What's the game before Strive?
Xrd
Xrd.
Xrd did get rollback, but it was after Strive was out.
Yeah, Xrd Sign was the first game before
Sam
Strive.
Show was retrofitted with a rollback, and it was a modern game.
Okay, fair enough.
True.
There you go.
Yeah. So that happened.
Also,
Also, it sucked.
I think
Like,
it did suck. I
the
think
netcode,
what
yeah.
I think what
Yeah, Xrd Rev 2. Xrd Rev 2 is the game I was talking about.
yeah, it did get rollback. But it's not the most recent game. It's Strive was out by the time. I guess what I really mean to say is that Tekken 7 was incredibly active during the time that it's that's a more accurate way to describe my point. Tekken 7 was incredibly active when it got its rollback retrofit, right? Like, I mean, it's one of the big 3. It was still being played main stage at EVO when it got its rollback update. And for a little while it worked. And then every subsequent update just kind of made it worse. I give Bandai Namco at least a little bit of credit that they tried.
Speaking of trying, though, I feel like this is a good time to talk about the February we had because we brought up Tekken 7. So let's bring up Tekken 8.
God.
Now,
All right.
now again, I enjoy
Like,
Tekken.
you just want to make this stressful, huh? That's cool.
I enjoy. I need to do this because I need people to not jump down our throats. I enjoy playing Tekken 8.
Tekken 8 is my favorite fighting game.
But
Maybe ever. But
yeah, it released and it had crashing problems. Like not just on PC. It crashed on like PS5 too.
Mhm.
Right? It crashed. It had connectivity problems. And to be able to go into friends lobbies cross console, you need to use friend codes. I want to make this clear in the grand scheme of our fighting games, video games thing. No more friend codes ever again was something we said in the Wii era. Like we told Nintendo we will never deal with friend codes ever again. And 2 new 2024 fighting games require the use of friend codes.
so
That's where we're at.
so
Like,
minor correction to that actually. It's actually slightly worse than that.
oh god, great. It's worse than I imagined.
Tekken 8 currently, as of recording this, has no method, at least that anybody has found, of adding someone as a friend in the in-game social system without meeting up physically in the avatar lobbies.
Oh my god.
Oh god.
There's nowhere where you can search for a player's name and send them a friend request in the in-game social system, which means that adding a friend cross-platform, you have to organize a meetup in the avatar lobby. And then you can click on each other's avatars and send a friend invite back and forth. And then once you're on each other's friends list, then you can go form a private lobby and invite them to things normally. But getting to that point has like 15 extra steps that don't need to be there.
Oh my god.
If the person you're trying to play with is on the same platform as you, then you can use your normal platform features to, like your Steam friends list or your PlayStation friends list to invite them to things, no problem. But we got crossplay, and it's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm really happy that we have crossplay, and it's revolutionary for the series because it's never had it before. But the hoops that we have to jump through just to get on each other's friends list cross-platform is ridiculous.
Right. Meanwhile, like, you boot up Fortnite and it's just like, I want to play a game with this motherfucker.
Yeah, you just type in their name, like,
I want to play with my guy friend who uses his iPhone.
Right, yeah.
On my powered PC.
Like, it feels like other genres had this stuff figured out decades ago because they did.
Right. And there's like a tax that it takes on you, right? Because let's talk about, CFX. Let's talk about Uni 2, right? Like, Uni 2 came out, and for a solid week or so, it was just impossible to do anything in that game.
It was
right?
literally unplayable online.
Yeah,
just
you couldn't,
just flat out unplayable. Just wasn't a thing.
Like, again, friend code issue, like stop using friend codes, period. But
it's just such an effete, weird way to try to engage in a game with somebody. Like, why do you need to verbally be like, oh, this is the code for us to be able to play together, instead of me just quite literally clicking a button like every other game that's online multiplayer and be like, you come here right now, and they're like, cool, this invite, sweet, I'm now in the game and now we can play.
The weird thing is that, like, when you, like, here's kind of what grinds my gears about it, right? You as the developer have the option to disable the join game from friend lists thing. You could say this is not a game that has the ability to be joined by the Steam friends list.
Yeah.
Uni 2 has that ability. They have not disabled that ability. It just doesn't work, and I don't think they're ever going to make it work. Like,
some games have that ability and some games don't, right? Like, Tekken 8 is actually great for that. I can just right-click on somebody on my Steam friends list, and there's a join game button.
Right.
But, like, I'm trying to think of a game I played recently that didn't. I think, like, KOF 15 doesn't. I mean, KOF is another game that we can talk about in this discussion too, because that game launched without properly functioning matchmaking. But
right,
I don't know if it lasted way longer than Tekken 8 and Uni. Like that lasted like almost a year with broken matchmaking.
That got fixed like a couple months ago.
I wanna bring this up because Stray brought this up, and this is important. Stray brought up the lack of VSync in a menu, right? That is way bigger than I think people in the fighting game community give it due.
That was King of Fighters too, right?
That was King of Fighters, yeah. That's important. It made the game inoperable for a lot of people, right? Because, and so and again, this was months. For months, we had to be able to play King of Fighters. We had to learn how to edit the Unreal Engine's .ini file in order to turn VSync on, because without turning VSync on, it would essentially change the frame data of moves, while you were playing, offline. Like, that's how crazy this was. And everybody was just like, yeah, okay.
You know what, though? I want to put a positive spin on this. Stuff like that. Stuff like learning how to adjust the Unreal Engine's files to play the game that we want to play. It does nothing but speak to the resilience of the fighting game community. You know what I mean?
That is true.
We will do anything to play these games that we like. Anything. The setups I have seen just to get Melee running at a local is ridiculous. I've seen CRTs hanging from ceilings. I've seen, I just earlier today, I saw somebody took a Wii.
Oh, the screen with the Wii? The Wii with the screen inside of it?
Screen inside of a Wii. to have a portable Melee setup.
Yeah, no, I'll send you the images after this.
Yeah.
But, like, no, that's crazy.
Like literally took the physical console and inserted a screen into it so that they could play Melee on a portable setup.
I mean, Melee
Hell
fans
yeah,
are built
dude.
different. Melee fans are built different,
They
right?
are.
We
Yeah,
didn't
no,
have
they
a
are.
training mode, we built a training mode. We didn't have rollback, we built rollback. We retroactively fitted rollback into a game that Nintendo abandoned.
It's
As
Exactly.
not
still
only
good.
like as a game, but as a community, right?
Like
We
Slippy,
so
Slippy is
amazing.
better than GTPO. Like Slippy
yeah.
is probably the best
Yeah,
rollback
'cause-
on the
'cause-
net right now.
And
because they dissected the entire game to do it to make
Mhm.
it seamless, right?
and just
It's
recently,
so crazy.
a mod got released for Street Fighter 4 that improved the netcode.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't released.
Oh, it hasn't been released yet.
No, so okay, so like someone like leaked someone's Google document or whatnot, and then like someone took down the Google document and was like, "This was not meant for public consumption. This doesn't work."
Oh,
Oh,
well, still,
I fell for that tweet. I
people-
fell for that tweet. I
people
got
are
so
working
mad.
on
They're still working on it. Yeah, no,
improving the
but they're
netcode
working
for
on
Street
it,
Fighter
right?
4.
So I actually I want to go back to Melee for a second because I actually kind of inside knowledge here. The things that they needed to do to create Slippy are mind-boggling, right? Like I actually want to give the Smash the Smash scene credit cuz like the thing that they realized was that you could get 99% of the way there, but then they had to handle RNG, right? Like
Mhm.
there are certain moves in Smash that inherently have RNG in them, like Peach's
Mhm.
turnips, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Luigi's misfires, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And if you're running two games independently, then there's always a chance that one side is going to generate a result different from the other side. This actually was something that the Guilty Gear team had a problem with Faust when they were retrofitting it into Plus R. RNG
Nice
is
always
really,
Faust.
yeah, RNG
Always
is
Faust.
really hard to handle, and there's a surprising amount of RNG in Smash, and they made it work, you know, basically by forcing one game to recognize another as its, you know, permanent RNG seed, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's a little crazy, you know.
Little bit.
It is a little crazy. Like that's really impressive. So like you know, we took this game that came out on a system that didn't have online for it. We didn't only build all the training mode, you know, stuff, which by the way, Melee's training mode, like current Melee training mode is really good. Like
It's Uncle Punch.
yeah, like it lets you like practice like high level stuff like current.
It has frame counters so that you can
Yeah.
like measure invulnerability. It has inbuilt tips for how you're messing up your ledge dashes and whatnot, where you're messing up your ledge dashes, what you can do to improve. Like it has in-game tips for every little like training thing that it gives you.
Oh yeah.
And it's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Older builds of Uncle Punch had full YouTube videos and like the videos ripped from YouTube and put into it explaining how to do the technique like in it. Like it was crazy. It was
And,
really
like,
crazy.
Imagine if a modern day fighting game, like, because everyone's always complaining, you know, oh, quarter circles are so hard, which, you know, that's a topic for another time, right?
Yeah, that's
But
a
imagine
different, that's a
if
different
modern-
episode.
Imagine if a modern day fighting game, you know, just like told you this is why you're screwing up your quarter circle.
Right?
Melee
Like
is
imagine
doing that
if
now.
the game told you the reason you failed this fireball was because you pressed your button and you were still holding down forward.
Mhm.
Is that feature in any game?
No, but it's in
No.
Melee.
Like that's
It's in
crazy.
Melee.
It's in Melee.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And
like,
so
yeah.
it speaks to the resilience of the fighting game community that we will make the game work. We will smash the rocks, you know. We will do science. We will smash the particles in the particle accelerator until there is a playable game, you know. But at the same time, I do actually want to ask this question. Should we? Like should we be the ones that are carrying this kind of, you know, responsibility for the scene? Because the reason why games have rollback right now is because we had a death plague, right? Like, we finally got to a point where we couldn't say, fuck it, let's go to a local, right? And suddenly, like, sales dropped real fast and stocks dropped real fast. And, like, you know, like, I mean, yeah, like, first of all, get this out of the way, overthrow capitalism. But, like, you know, bearing that, you know, bearing that solution, you know, like, maybe fighting games should fail more often, you know, like, or at least I'm sort of putting that out there. What do you guys think?
So for me, it's very much like, I don't ever want to say a fighting game should fail, right? I don't want to ever have to say that about a game. I think it's true. I think some games don't deserve the success that the community gives them. But I think that the community is going to forefront things because the community realizes what we need before the developers do, right? The community is the ones that realized, hey, we need better online. So we started making mods and rebuilding games from the ground up to get better online. The community decided, hey, we need better training modes. So we started creating resources and building better training modes and demanding this stuff, right? And I think while the community is always going to be one step ahead of the developers in terms of knowing what we want and what we need, I think that there could be a little bit more effort from the devs to at least try to keep up with us. You know, and like, I don't want to say that they're not trying, because I mean, Tekken 8 launched with replay takeover, which is huge, enormous, especially for a game like Tekken where every character has like 300 moves, right? And so now you don't have to go in and try and lab this incredibly specific situation and like recreate it in the training mode tools that are already a little bit confusing. You can just watch the replay and then click, you know, give me control, and then try and figure out what to do in that exact situation that happened to you in the game that confused you, right? And that was pioneered in the Plus R re-release when it got its rollback retrofit. The team that did that added that replay takeover function to Guilty Gear Accent Core. And that sparked this huge campaign for more games to get it, right? Everybody wants their fighting game to have replay takeover. It's a feature we didn't even know we wanted until somebody thought of it out of the blue one day and stuck it in a game, and now it's like a selling point, you know? And I think that that's always going to happen, and I think devs can and should put a little bit more effort into keeping up. That's my take.
Can I give a hot take as
it.
to why we're in the situation we're in?
Mm-hmm.
Of ill-begotten features, or features being left out, games being released with very minimal features for as long as they have been. I think it's because of this mentality that we're sort of talking about, where we will make the game right, but I think it's because the developers trying to appeal to the competitive scene first and not the casual audience first.
I don't think that's a hot take at all.
Yes, that.
So,
you know.
So like, we go back to Street Fighter V, right? What, and like, I forget who said this, right? What else are we gonna play? Street Fighter V, right? And we talk about how like that game was pushed and put into the esports. That was pushed and put into esports because it was meant to be an esports game first instead of a video game, right? And that's how you get the Street Fighter V release. Now, like, I kind of defended the Street Fighter V release under that pretext when it came out, right? And I guess it's fine if a game wants to be that, but like, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be fine. I don't know.
No, it definitely shouldn't be fine. And I think, again, that it's just that level of complacency that fighting game players have, where it's just like, oh, can I just press buttons? And like, if it works, it works. And if I don't, I'll just go to Twitter. And then if it doesn't get fixed fast enough, I'll then just drop it, because then apparently it's a failed product. Which that being said, it's like, it's not wrong, but
Right. This is as much a self-critique of all of us, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think every single person in this room is fuck it, let's press buttons.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sung Skullgirls' praises when it had no move list. I said the same shit that everyone else did when we were like, Marvel 2 is one of the best versus games of all times, and it didn't have a move list. I'm like, yeah, and it came out on the Dreamcast. Like stupid meme from 2012. Like, you know,
This just encourages emergent play. Just figure out the moves on your own.
Figure
So,
out the
man.
moves on your own.
and that was
And that's why RPG doesn't like blabbing.
I'm gonna be honest. That's literally it. Like, you know, I never learned to have the mental fortitude to go to the lab.
What
Because-
RPG doesn't know is that RPG's been gaslit into labbing and not knowing it.
Right? No, I just do the same shit that you guys do in the lab, but in versus matches against people who are much worse than me. Like, literally.
You start every game, you're like quarter circle forward this button. Nope.
Yeah.
Quarter circle forward this button. Nope.
That's
Quarter circle
literally
forward
what I
this
do.
button.
That's literally what I do. Because like
Alright,
if I had
Dragon Punch?
any hope, if I had any hope of ever playing fighting games with my Meat Space friends, I had to, you know, go in knowing fuck all, you know, or else they wouldn't play with me.
Right.
So I would just go into a game. I would pick the character that was cool, and I'm like, we're learning as we go, boys. We're learning as we go. But yeah, no. This ties into our thing though, because they're like I'm the old here, right? You know, I am old as far as this group goes, right?
You don't look a day
and-
over 40.
There are a lot of thanks.
You're such a piece of shit, dude. I was gonna say 45,
actually a lot of people in my God. There are a lot of people like sort of in my generation who don't lab, right? And part of that is that like, and I'm just talking about how like this has been a cycle that's been going on. Part of that is that the lab is a relatively new thing.
Yeah.
Like training modes didn't really happen until around the Dreamcast era. But playing matches with bots in first-person shooters was again something that Doom had.
I was
You
listening,
know?
Damn it,
I was
dude.
listening to a different podcast. It was about Super Turbo, but James Chen was on it about how he would write about game facts. Like he would write game facts guides to all the characters. And he said to figure out true combos on his Sega Saturn, he would have Street Fighter Alpha 3, I think it was, and he would literally with his toe hold the down back button
Yeah, I remember doing
to
that.
try a combo out to see if it would work on the second controller. Because the training mode didn't have it. Or they didn't have one, right?
That's wild.
Yeah, I remember you had to like Shanghai your little brother into like, you know, hold it. It's like, okay, here's the deal. We're going to play this game, but the only thing you're going to do is hold back. And then as soon as I hit you, mash jab. Because I want to see if something works. And you do that for 2 hours, and then your brother would complain to your mom, and you get in trouble. You know, this is getting too personal. But anyway,
And then you're not even sure if he's jabbing at the right time.
Yeah,
or if he's
exactly.
slow, or if it's you messing up the combo, right?
so like again, and I know that this is like a lot of complaining, but again, the weird thing that I'm taking this from a historical point of view, right? The weird thing that I want to ask is why? Because it's not just that, you know, the fighting game community is dedicated, because like first-person shooter fans are dedicated, right? Like RTS fans are dedicated. Fucking they made a whole new genre. They made the MOBA genre, you know, like spinning off of Warcraft 3. Like fans are dedicated. So what is it that makes it so that literally features that we saw from the early 90s are now only 30 years later becoming commonplace in fighting games, you know? Is it just that we are a quote-unquote niche genre? Because I would say that they're like golf is more niche than us, right? But golf has those features and has had those features before us, you know? Like, so, you know, PGA Tour has had functioning rollback netcode before we did, you know? So, like, is it really that we're niche? What do you think like actually makes this happen.
I want to say that it's a cultural thing, right? Because there's a very specific type of guy, and I use the word guy, liberally. There's a specific type of person that went to arcades and put quarters in a machine and had to win to keep playing. And I'm talking about RPG, but we're not going to say that out loud.
Man, I can't believe I just read your mind right now.
It's my fault. No, it's my fault.
Yeah,
Fighting
it's-
games don't have rollback because of me.
So
Yeah.
let me get where I'm
Man.
going. Let me get where I'm
Yeah.
going. So, the fighting games were born in arcades, one quarter at a time, one match at a time, face to face against other people, right? And that is something that is relatively unique to our genre in terms of
All the
like
youngs are gonna blame the old right now.
in terms of competitive games, right? Because like first person shooters started to catch on as competitive games when they started going online, right? I mean, of course, LANs and offlines exist for first person shooters, but the core of competition in the first person shooter and the RTS genre is online.
Mhm.
For fighting games, that core was built in arcades, face to face, offline, on the same machine, putting quarters in. And that sort of foundation dictates the way that we as a community act for the rest of time, right? Like that's the foundation that we're built on, is playing these games offline, one game mode, which is fight. And
Right.
and that's
No
it.
pauses. You couldn't pause.
Yeah, you couldn't pause.
Your mom's calling you. You're locked in.
Yeah.
Now you're fighting your friend and your mom.
Right, exactly. You really want to beat this guy, but you just ran out of quarters, so you have to go beg for more.
Mhm.
And it sort of created this culture where it's like, what we are here to do is fight each other, right? Offline, face to face, beat each other up. And that's what the community cared about going into the era of home consoles. So when we started to get these games that were, like these new Street Fighter games and stuff that were coming out for home consoles, yeah, it was cool to have them, but the mindset of the people that were transitioning into that era still lived in the arcades.
And the mindset still is, right? That like you go online to practice for your local. For
right,
the competitor, right?
Exactly.
You go online to practice for your local. Like online, it quote unquote doesn't matter.
Right.
Right.
And that's
And
starting
like-
to shift, as more bigger sponsors and stuff start running like Tekken 8 is having online qualifiers. Capcom Cup has a bunch of online qualifiers.
Mhm.
Online is starting to matter more. But the culture is still very much rooted in offline face-to-face competition. And you can see shades of that anywhere you go in the FGC, is that our foundation is built offline. And because of that, at least in my opinion, those roots are why we were more complacent when it came to features that would be considered excess for our purposes, right? Like, I don't really care if this game has good online because I'm only using it for the training mode so that when I go to the arcade next week, I have new combos ready.
Mhm.
So I don't like transitioning into that era was just different for us than it was for other genres because we had different expectations out of our games. We were bred to fight each other. That's what it is. And anything excess of that, just, I don't want to say it didn't matter, but to a lot of people, didn't matter. To me, it doesn't even really matter. I don't really play extra excess game modes. I haven't touched Tekken Ball yet. So that's just the kind of person I am. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean that those features shouldn't be there now. I'm happy
Yeah, I
Tekken
didn't
Ball
touch
got
World Tour
included.
mode in Street Fighter 6.
Yeah, I also didn't touch World Tour mode in Street Fighter 6.
Right?
I was
But World
literally
Tour
just
mode is
in training
revolutionary.
mode.
But yeah, no,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
here's the thing. So many people did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the reason why Street Fighter 6 sold as well as it did, and the reason why Street Fighter 6 can now have like literal $1 million, which is another thing that we're behind on, but like $1 million, tournament scene is because of the people who played World Tour mode. Like when you saw Street Fighter 6 get reviewed, I'm putting this out there right now. We talked a lot about how Street Fighter 5 was not a video game when it released. Street Fighter 6 is a video game with a capital V, right? Like Street Fighter 6 had everything that the competitive scene needed, everything that the casual scene needed, and it's still pumping out single player content. I know not a damn person in this call, got the DLC character, got Rashid, or got Aki, and was like, I can't wait for their World Tour story. But if you look at the gameplay data, that's what most people are doing. Not most people in the FGC, but most people are like, awesome, now I get to create my character this way, I get to do XYZ, I get to see the story. People want that out of the game, right? We don't, but gamers in general do. And I do actually think that, and this is just not for fighting games, I think every game has had a strategy to appeal to, quote unquote gamers in general, and we just might be bad at it. Like that might just be, we might actually be too stuck in our parents' basement to like understand what like the mainstream wants. Cause like I would have swore like Tekken 8's story mode is so fucking cool. It is so fucking cool. Like it is so incredibly cool. So like I would almost say Tekken 8 is a video game, except it had so many problems on release,
which did get fixed. I want to spin the ball on that. The issues did get fixed, and they got fixed relatively quickly. The crashing issues were fixed by the next day.
There's actually two things here. Both were said by Stray that I think are important to consider. The first thing is that we started in arcades. What are we doing compared to other arcade games? Arguably, there was a time when we were video games, and that was the SNES, right? Because if you compare Street Fighter 2 on the SNES with Super Mario World on the SNES, they have a comparable amount of features, right? Like, so,
I mean, like Street Fighter 2 on the SNES, you had arcade mode, and that's it.
Right, and Super Mario World, you had 1 player and 2 player, and that's it.
Yeah, but you had like a whole bunch of levels and stuff. I don't know. I guess so.
And Street Fighter 2 had a whole bunch of stages and characters, and
okay, I guess that's fair.
I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, it feels like in that era, we did actually keep up with game design, right? Because what a game was you had a 1-player mode where you did a whole bunch of stuff and got an ending. You had a 2-player mode where you either played with or against people, right? And then you had options. And that's what you had in the SNES character and the SNES days. And fighting games in the SNES days did have 1-player, 2-player, and options, right? But that
we don't even have options in modern time though. So how do they have options?
That's true. Yeah.
Like, how does this even make sense? Like, why are we constantly regressing?
No, there's a lot of SNES games you could remap your controls. I think
that's true.
Pretty sure.
Oh god,
dude, I hate this. Dude, we should just start the podcast called "This is exactly why fighting games are bad."
I did not go into this episode expecting for everyone else in the podcast to say, "Oh, but it's so much worse than that." Whatever I give an example. I thought I was gonna be the biggest pessimist. Like, holy crap!
I mean, I don't want to be a pessimist, right? I want to, because I love fighting games, and I love the fighting game community
1000%
for everything that it is and isn't. I love the fighting game community. I love fighting games, and I want them to be better, and I want them to grow. And I think in a lot of ways they have. I want to make that very clear. Tekken 8, Street Fighter 6, and even Mortal Kombat 1 were fantastic releases on the scale that they were launched at. You know, the big three are the big three right now.
100%.
And you know, each of those games has its issues. Because of course they do. We can't just have nice things.
Fighting games.
We're fighting games, right? And we make it work.
Absolutely. We still love the games that we love. And that's like the thing about, I think that's like testament to the resilience of the community itself, right?
Yeah,
It's like
absolutely.
even through all of like kind of like the hiccups and like all of the kind of just unsavory things about it, it's like we still, like you were saying, like we still go to offlines, we still enjoy these games with other people to love them and like just enjoy them, be like, oh, like I didn't understand this, can you explain it to me? Like it's like, oh, I got blown up by this, what is this? Or like, oh man, can you show me that sometime? I'm trying to learn this character. And there's that communal vibe that is just so good about the fighting game community. It like just off glance of that where you're just like, this is exactly why we do it.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's
Like-
that's the offshoot of the arcade culture that, you know, built our foundation, you know, because we were built as a social but competitive community. That's the foundation that we continue to grow on, right? And I mean, shout outs to Phil, right? Always shout outs to Phil. Phil, of course, for so many reasons. But Phil ran invitationals for Mortal Kombat and Tekken 8. Both of those games gave him the absolute worst times of his life until the next one, right?
Phil is God's strongest soldier.
Phil is God's strongest
I don't
soldier.
I don't even think Phil's real. I think Phil's like a fever dream we've all had. Yeah.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Hey, there are
not
three
to be
people in this call
pessimistic
who've met
again.
Phil in real life.
Not to be pessimistic.
I don't know. Have you all?
like,
No.
but like Mortal Kombat still doesn't have lobbies.
Yeah.
And
So-
Yeah, that's wild.
Phil ran an entire invitational in a game with no lobbies.
So this
Yeah.
actually brings up probably the biggest question, right? Because the question that we started with were, are these games video games, right? I would argue that for the majority of people, not for the majority of the FGC, but for the majority of the common gamers, Mortal Kombat 1 and Tekken 8 were capital V video games because they had a really robust single player, which is what most people are looking for. So the deeper question here is, does it matter if fighting games are video games? And I think that's the question that the FGC has been grappling with, because I think in the modern day, that has been called into question. I think we have gotten to a point where we are a little exhausted, right?
A little
And
bit, yeah.
and you know, I'm not just saying that, you know, to complain. I'm saying this as from a business perspective, right? Will the FGC, will fighting games continue to succeed, for whatever definition of success, right? If this is the model that they follow? I would say we're starting to see the beginnings of that answer being no. Because we are seeing people, you know, or at least no asterisk, no big asterisk, right? Because the numbers do show fighting games selling better than ever, right?
Mhm.
Like the sales are up.
Yeah.
So I'm not talking about will fighting games as a business succeed. I'm saying will fighting games as a scene succeed, right? Because those invitationals did not go well, right? It is getting harder to run online locals. It's getting harder to run offline locals for some of these games, right?
Mhm.
So like, are we gonna manage to continue being kind of like the corner store arcade? I'm not sure we are. You know, like I think we're feeling a lot of pressure from mainstream gaming, and that might change fighting games in some way. I'm not entirely sure how, but it might. You know, or at least that's how I think. What about you guys?
Yeah, I feel like just I feel like RPG, your point of fighting games being just a little bit more of like from the arcade standpoint is definitely true as to like kind of especially a game like Tekken, for instance, where you're just like you have like Tekken Ball, you know what I mean? Like that is not any way stretch of aspect of a fighting game, but it's in a fighting game. And that really does then show that it's trying to appeal to said casual audience where it's like, oh, are you still playing Tekken, but you're a little bit burnt out from just like fighting people? How about you just go play this kind of like fun game, Tekken Ball, right over here, but it's still playing the game and you're still playing said video game. But like, I feel like that exhaustion of constantly just being like, all right, I need to fight somebody. All right, that's it. And then I'm done with my session of this video game or game, whatever. Like, and it's hard because like I personally have felt kind of like fighting game exhaustion recently, and Uni has barely been able to keep up with that. It's kind of sad because I love fighting games so much, but it's kind of monotonous in that aspect where all I'm doing is the one thing.
So
To
that point, is it the devs' fault that we're like this? Or should we chill out maybe?
I think maybe we should chill out. I think go ahead, sorry.
Like because all we do is beat each other up, right? Like maybe we should chill out and play some Tekken Ball.
We should play some Tekken Ball,
yeah. Maybe it's our fault we're burnt out.
Hey man, I have been the greatest high schooler in Persona 3 Reload right now, okay? I'm a top A student. Right? Like, and then you look at like just like an offshoot of that, but like you look at a game like Persona 3 Reload as an example here, where it's like the game has online and has online aspects, and it worked day one. Just it was a functioning video game out of the game. And that's what people want. They want functioning products for what you spend your money on, right? And I think like especially the fighting game community has this notion where like at least some part of it where it's like it's okay to accept an inferior product, and then if you get mad at that, then you're the problem. And it's like, well, no. It's like you developed this game and I am spending money on it. So when I buy it, I expect it to work. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it's like, and when you buy a game and it doesn't work, it's most definitely not a video game. It is most definitely not a video game.
Are we traumatized? Like is the whole fighting game community just kind of like reacting in a food insecure way? You know, where it's like you know, when you're food insecure, you're like you can't criticize your meal. You never know when you're gonna get a new meal, right? So it's like, are we doing the same thing but with gameplay? It's like, oh, but if we don't love the game,
yes.
I feel like I've never seen a fighting game player shy away from hating the thing they love the most.
But that's the thing, is that they'll hate it, but they'll still buy it and they'll still play it.
we like
Stockholm syndrome.
Because we need fighting games to continue to exist, right? And there's been this fear that fighting games aren't popular, they're niche, companies don't want to make them. You get laughed out of an executive boardroom if you pitch making a fighting game. So that when we get one, I use we generally, but some people feel like it is their responsibility to monetarily support a product that they might not even like. Like, my PS4 is loaded with fighting games that I have never launched. Because I would see them on sale and go, somebody at my local might want to play this. So I'll pick it up for $15. Like,
and I need
the
to beat them up.
I don't know. I didn't buy Tekken 8 or Uni, so I don't know. Maybe it's a skill issue.
It is. It absolutely is.
You know,
but that's what I'm saying, is that I'm graduating from being the setup guy, right? Because I used to be the guy who showed up to the local and my console had all of the games on it with all of the DLC. Because I felt some latent responsibility to provide my scene with that because I could, you know? and someone had to in order for the scene to continue to live, and that's still true.
It's wild.
I mean,
It's wild to me. This is like, I come from a Smash scene, right? With the Smash scene, right? At first, we were running all our tournaments together.
mhm.
Then the Melee people hated the Smash 4 people, and we just split off completely. We have the Melee day, we have the Smash 4 day. It's wild to me that there's so many fighting games that it's the FGC day, and you're running all the games at the same time.
I have argued with local TOs over that for years, for a decade.
Yeah, maybe you just got to have your Tekken day and your Street Fighter day.
And we tried that. And when we tried to do that, all of the people that showed up when they were joint did not show up when they were separate.
Yeah.
We'd have 15 people who played Tekken and like 20 people who
And
played
nothing
Street
else.
Fighter and nothing else. And then 20 people who played Street Fighter and nothing else on the same day, crowding the same basement of a Chinese restaurant, which is where I hosted my locals.
Uh-huh.
And no AC, by the way.
Obligatory.
And obligatory.
No AC.
And then when we finally decided, hey, maybe our fighting game day has gotten big enough to split, and then we'll run like maybe 2 games this day and 2 games the next day. When we tried to do that, nobody showed up to either day.
Oh my god.
And I don't know
The
why.
classic.
I don't know why. I wish I knew why.
Actually,
That's
speaking of
wild.
Smash, here's an interesting thing about Smash. I would argue that Ultimate is the best-selling not a video game that we have seen, because Ultimate's feature suite is not that great. Its single player is not particularly good, right? Like,
I don't want to be mean to the Ultimate people.
Also, still not no netcode.
Still
like,
no netcode. I don't. Yeah. Man.
I don't mean to put you on the spot here as the Melee representative.
Listen,
But I am.
Maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I really shouldn't be talking about Smash Ultimate, because I didn't even buy that game for myself. The game was gifted to me at Christmas because someone was like, "Oh, I saw you didn't get the next Smash game." I thought, well, maybe I'd get it for you. I was like, "Oh, thanks." I'd never unlocked all the characters, so I didn't even play that game, right? So so I could be really mean to that game. I could be particularly mean to, I think, the scene for that game. I think Puffer's the only cool Ultimate player I've ever met in my life.
It exists.
Puffer McSparkleface. But I haven't met a lot of them, so I'm sure a lot of y'all are great.
Shout out to the goat, Buffer McSparkleface.
Yeah, shout outs to Puffer.
But yeah, no, like the thing about Ultimate, right? It has better features than Smash 4, though, right? It has an actual ranked ladder. Smash 4 didn't have that on the Wii U. It didn't. I mean, that's all I can really. It had lobbies. It sort of had lobbies, right?
Right, but here's the
thing.
thing. Is that content or is that more competition brain rot?
I mean, that's competition. That's competition brain rot, right? Like,
which is content in its own way, but it's not the content that we've been talking about.
But that is actually just functional online. That's not even.
Right, yeah.
I'm gonna take that back. I don't think that's competition brain rot. That's just functional online.
Right.
Because you know what Smash 4 was? For fun, for glory. You know what For Glory was? Final Destination only. No items. Final Destination only. That stuff was wild. But Smash Ultimate, you have an actual ranked mode.
Mhm.
You have an actual. You have numbers that go up as you play better. That's not just competition brain rot. To me, that's content.
So actually, I think the reason why I bring up Ultimate is because we've talked a lot about fighting games that don't do well in the mainstream, but do well for us, and that the mainstream looks at and they're like, why would I ever buy this game? It's not giving me what I want. But Smash came out, like Smash Ultimate comes out, and Smash Ultimate was reviewed very favorably by most people, right? Is seen as one of the best fighting games by
It's one of the
most
best
main-
sellers on the Nintendo Switch, which is
Yeah.
the second best selling console of all time, right?
Yeah.
Second best, right? No, third best right now, because the DS I think still sold more than
yeah.
it. But anyway,
So it's very clearly
but here's
gotten that down, right?
so here's the thing about Smash and Smash Bros. I'm a Smash Bros. Player. Hear me when I say this. Smash Bros. Isn't a fighting game. It has a fighting game inside of it.
I can hear the comments
I can hear
being
it.
typed out now.
I understand what you mean.
because to make Smash Bros. A fighting game, you had to play with custom settings, and so Smash Bros. Was always the community making it a game that we wanted to be competitive with all the features that it gave us. All these features that someone else who wants to play a video game, a party game, or something like that wants to have to add fun. But the competitive person has the option to turn it off or turn it on for whatever purpose they want. Right? So that's why I'll say this about every Smash, Melee included. Super Smash Brothers is not a fighting game. There is a fighting game inside there, though. Right? You have to take it out.
The sculpture
So
is
then
inside the marble. You have to.
Yeah, exactly. The sculpture
You
is
just have
inside
to
the
mold.
marble. And people disagree about the marble now, right?
So-
About people disagree about stage selections and whatnot. Smash is really interesting, right? Because already at day one, every other fighting game is like out of the box, boom, that's the game we're playing. Smash Ultimate, you got to talk about that. You got to talk that shit over. Like, should Duck Hunt stage be legal, right? I always thought it shouldn't have been legal, and it was legal first, then it was banned later on, right? So Smash is a really interesting case, right?
So here's actually, so I'm really glad that you brought this up, because maybe that's the only place that fighting games do exist. Because isn't what you're doing in Smash just the Smash version of editing the INI file? Like, that's the editing of the INI file you have to do, right? Like,
Yeah,
to
sort of,
extract
but
the
it's like
playable game.
in the menus that you can do.
Like,
You can turn all the
right,
items off,
right?
right?
Yeah, you don't have to go into a Windows file, right? But still, you have to extract a playable game after what you are given is not a playable game, right?
So,
I think
yeah,
is what I'm saying.
I want to push back on that because what you're given is a playable game. Right? Smash Bros out of the box is a playable game that functions as intended, usually, right?
Usually.
Yeah,
I can't think of a
2
Smash
minute
Bros.
2 minute free for alls.
Yeah.
Everybody
think
quick
of a
start
s-
on their controller. You're playing a 2 minute free for all. Whoever
Mhm.
kills the most wins.
Uh-huh.
That's a video game.
I can't think of a Smash Bros game that has launched that was like reviewed poorly for like performance features, right? Like
Mhm.
crashing and like bugs and glitch and like that sort
Mhm.
of thing. The community just has to trim the excess to make the game competitive, right? But the game that comes in the box is a functioning video game. I mean,
Well, so is
online
King of
aside.
so was King of Fighters 15. Like, King of Fighters
True.
15, if the only thing you did was boot it up into single player and play through to the end to fight, Goddess McLongarms, right? Then you as a casual player, you're gonna have no idea that your frame data is being altered because VSync is off,
Fair enough.
right? So that is also a functional game, and we extracted the competitive game from it by being like, well, if you want this to be competitive so that everyone's buttons line up and everyone has the same frame data, go into the files, edit this INI, turn
I think
VSync
there's-
on.
I still think
know?
there's a barrier of like intent there.
Mhm.
Because like I highly doubt the developer meant for you to have to edit the engine to
Mhm.
to make the game function consistently. I see what you're saying. I think there's a difference between turning off some settings to create a custom game mode that you want to play and literally having to learn how to code to make the game function properly. I think there's
Yeah,
some
that-
layers of separation there.
Yeah, no, that's very different, right? I don't know. Like, what if, like, a better example would be, what if all of a sudden everybody decided it's first to 4 for every Tekken round?
Mhm.
Right.
Like, that's a feature you could do, right?
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah. We already decide to make it 3 rounds Tekken out of the
Yeah,
box.
that's right.
The rounds
that's right.
are-
Out
the
of the
rounds are
box,
set to
it's
2.
2 rounds, right?
Yeah.
But
Is it
like
really?
you change it to 3.
I did not know that. I always thought it was 3.
Nope. If you boot up Tekken and play an offline match, it's set to 2 rounds. Ranked is set to 3 rounds, and I think casual like player match online is set to 3 rounds by default.
Yeah,
But-
this is why
Mhm.
Tekken and Melee are the same game. We mess with
Whoa,
ourselves.
whoa. Slow down.
It's
Slow down.
so interesting
Okay,
that
enough.
you're on that side, Stray, because the melee fan base did code to make their game work, right?
Yeah.
Like they did build Flippy from the ground up. They learned online networking frameworks.
Yeah,
They're just
I
like,
was
"We're getting
I was
this
playing
shit."
Melee for 8 years before Slippy came out.
True.
I don't know.
Damn. It's a long time.
Yeah, it's wild. I was there when the Leffen rap came out. I was there when Respect Your Elders came out, dude. Like that was wild. I saw that Twitter beef break down.
I was
in
also
real
there for
time.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't stick around for much longer after that, but I remember the release of that diss track.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like I don't know. But yeah, no, we did go in and we did edit the files so that it can play rollback on and whatnot. And so that we can save our replays on our memory cards. Literally save replays on our memory cards and stuff like that. We did do a whole bunch of stuff like that. We've always done a whole bunch of stuff like that. But like that's still I mean, we're mostly talking about Ultimate right now, first off, right? From the box Ultimate, like you can do all that stuff and you don't have to go into the code and whatnot.
Mhm.
Outside of rollback, I guess. I don't know. It feels very different due to the level of involvement that is normally needed.
Right, yeah.
So I guess the thing we've heard a lot about this topic here, right? I guess the thing that I want to kind of like approach before we end the episode is where do we go from here, right? Because now we've talked about whether or not fighting games are video games. It seems like many recent releases are, but still are kind of falling short of the bar, right? Because we said Tekken 8 probably a video game, crashed on release, right? You know, Uni 2 I would say not so much, but not as much as Tekken 8 at least. Still has online issues, right?
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat 1 PC version still doesn't have a working input buffer. You know?
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot about the input buffer issues. Yeah.
Are you serious? Still.
Yep. Still. Yes.
So
Unbelievable.
In
actually.
NetherRealm's
But-
defense, they have announced a patch that I believe, and I'd have to triple check, but it is intended to fix that issue along with adding traditional lobbies.
But again, a lot of people would consider Mortal Kombat 1 a video game because of its robust single player issues. So, it feels like largely the one thing that we agree on is that modern day fighting games have a lot more things that appeal to the mainstream, and yet are still kind of release broken.
Mhm.
So, and more broken than other games, because like every game in the modern day is released somewhat broken. Like there's day one patches for everything, but like,
Yeah.
you were like Broseph was playing COD day one, you know, without as many issues.
Mhm.
Day two, on the other hand, like day two, on the other hand, went way downhill. So,
So like, I mean, it's hard to talk about this. We haven't brought up Street Fighter 6 yet. Street Fighter 6
yeah.
didn't have those issues. Street Fighter 6
Mhm.
launched clean. That game
occasionally
came
there are
out.
server issues, right? But that's like expected.
Right. Well,
Right,
every
having
game,
a
every
server
online
issue.
game has server issues. Which, like, do we give devs leeway for that? We do. Should we? That's a different discussion.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, COD has server
Yeah,
issues
COD
too.
has server
right?
issues.
Every game has server issues, right?
Yeah, I think that's just
Something-
natural, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, something that you
Yeah.
just gotta work with.
But like,
So that
it wasn't crashing. It had functioning lobbies. It was easy to add people to your friends list, and you could form. We formed our club day one
Mhm.
and started running sets. And
Mhm.
It was
And I can play shoot 'em ups in the arcade in that game.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It has shoot 'em ups.
Literal video games inside the video game.
Yeah, there was
Right.
whole video games inside this video game.
Yeah,
Right.
straight up, right?
It was video gameception. Like,
Videoception. Wah, wah,
yeah.
wah, wah.
And so Street Fighter 6 had a clean launch. And that just tells me that we can do it, guys. Game devs, if you're Bandai Namco devs, Capcom. Well, props to Capcom, but fighting game devs in general.
Golf clap to Capcom.
Yeah,
you
golf
know?
clap Capcom. We can do it. We can have a clean, successful launch of a fighting game without major issues that make the game basically unplayable for a large portion of the player base. And I think we should strive to do that more often.
100%.
That'd be
And I
great.
think, especially with fighting games being a little bit more like being pushed into a little bit more of the forefront of like being more popular as of recent time or as later times, it's like when fighting games launch unplayable, it really does kill momentum for said game, depending on the game. I'm not saying Tekken's one of those things, but like Uni, for instance, like Uni's had a lot of eyes on it for like all of its like training mode things. They had replay takeover, like Ghoul was saying with Tekken, like which is huge for fighting games. But like if the game, especially like a niche game like Uni, doesn't work online, it's gonna kill the momentum like full stop, and people aren't gonna want to try it anymore. Like because like it's just how the attention span of just the internet in general works, right? Like if it's like broken for like 3 days, they're like, well, it doesn't exist anymore.
Yep.
And then and they just don't give it the time of day. Even if it does get fixed on day 4, day 3 was the thing that mattered. So it's like yeah.
To your point, the last time I booted up King of Fighters 15 was for Phil's Invitational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like after that, because I had the tournament to motivate me into playing. And that was enough to get me to run sets with people, to practice and grind and learn characters and look for games what I'm looking for. Manually is the wrong word, but I guess it applies. Look for
It's
games
manual.
myself, without using the matchmaking. But once the momentum of playing in the Invitational wore off, and I was like, okay, well, let's go online, and the matchmaking didn't work, game's gone. It's like,
yeah, straight up.
Tournament was over, no desire to play it after that.
Stray, remember when I invited you to play Lethal Company and the mods didn't work and it was frustrated and you're like, I just don't want to do this anymore? That's what it feels every time I boot up Uni 2. Like the reason
game don't work.
I love
Game
Uni
works
2.
now.
I love Uni 2 so much. I love it so much. But or at least back when it launched, I was faced with the choice. Do I try and get this game to work? Or do I play Persona 3 Reload? Which I double click and it works. And I find myself, even though I still love Uni and I want to play more Uni, because that's what it was like on launch, I am not booting it up as much. I can reasonably, in sound mind and body say I love this game and I want to play it more, and I don't because of the experiences I had on launch. And I think that is a way that games can lose momentum, The launch period is the most important period for every video game.
Yeah, look at DNF Duel, man. They had a whole ass year of radio silence for their video game. Whole ass year. And people fell off. There's obviously a dedicated player base, and honestly, I'm kind of one of them. I do like playing that game, and it's enjoyable. But it's
it's a fun fighting game.
It is.
Yeah, so it's Like when you're playing the game, it does feel good. And with all the new changes, like the Indomitable, like pretty much they gave a push block now. There's a backwards roll. There are a lot more defensive mechanics where people were like complaining about that.
And
It
that game
lacked.
has everything, right? Like it has
Yeah.
it has your rollback netcode. It has
Yeah.
well, not your single player, right? It has everything. It has everything that you would need to play with your friends,
Yes.
right? And that's
Indeed.
the struggle.
Except inviting friends. Back to the friend code.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
No
But even
more
that's
friend
not the-
codes.
Even that, I don't know, but it's still not that hard to find your room in DNF. I
No,
never had a problem with
absolutely
it.
not.
Like it was
No.
like instant. Like, oh hey, give me your friend code. It's like, 69, 69, 69. Cool.
And then it's done. And honestly, DNF Duel has some of the best rollback in modern.
Yeah.
Honestly, DNF rollback is really good.
Yeah, that
Like,
next
yeah.
feels really good.
Really, really good.
You know what's also nice about
So-
DNF? You know what's it's compact.
It is
Yeah.
compact.
It is a
Tekken
very
Tekken
small
8
thing.
is like 100 gigs. Street Fighter is like 50 gigs. Like I have a small hard drive. Okay, I can just keep DNF installed, and I'm like, cool.
You're like, sweet, 7 gigs.
Straight up.
You know what I've realized? We've talked about this for an hour and a half, and I think I've realized something. All the devs are missing the pile of shit on the floor. Like we are like, hey devs, there's a pile of shit on the floor. Can you please clean up the pile of shit on the floor? And then they come to us and we're like, we
Oh,
baked
sorry.
you
Here's a
really-
cocktail.
Yeah, like here's the cocktail. We're like, this cocktail's great. But you didn't clean up the pile of shit on the floor. You know?
Oh,
And then
hold on. Here's some Febreze. Here's some air
Yeah,
freshener
yeah.
for you.
This pile of shit's really ruining this ambiance.
Yeah, exactly. We baked you a really nice cake, and I'm like, cool. I wasn't, like the cake is cool, but you didn't clean the pile of shit off the floor, Like, and that pile of shit comes in many different varieties, like it may be lack of single player modes, it may be, lack of online functionality, but like it feels a lot.
There's always one
like-
pile of shit.
Right, like for Ultimate, it's lack of rollback, right? It's like,
Uh-huh.
look at all of these characters, this music, and it's like, great, but Nintendo, there's a pile of shit on the floor, like for King of Fighters 15, it's like we've added a new boss fight mode where you can get a new costume, by fighting an ultra hard SNK boss, which is like SNK tradition. It's like, cool. SNK, there's a pile of shit on the floor. Did you fix the pile of shit? Like Mortal Kombat's like we spared no expense to create a huge cinematic mode, right? And new fatalities, and we have like all your favorite ultra violent characters are coming as DLC. And we're like, cool, the buffer doesn't work. Did you clean up the pile of shit on the floor? And that's, I think, what we're having right here. I think it's the fact that the clear and present problems aren't being fixed, right? None of them are cleaning up the pile of shit on the floor. They're giving us a nice cake. They're giving us a good cocktail, but the pile of shit is still there.
It's a little interesting that it's a different pile of shit for everyone.
It is.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is. It's a completely different pile of shit for every game, but there's always a pile of shit.
Because
Which
we
I
can
think-
just have nice things.
Except for Street Fighter.
Except for Street Fighter.
Except for
Street
Street Fighter.
We were like,
Fighter.
basically, Street Fighter 5 came out, right? And they basically were like, here is a dump truck full of shit. And we were like, please get rid of the dump truck full of shit. And then they were like, oh, okay, cool. And then they got rid of the dump truck full of
The
shit.
only problem with Street Fighter is the menu's too expensive.
All right. Does anybody else want to say anything else before we let people know what's going on in the community and sign off?
I think everybody should just try that fighting game you always wanted to once try. If you think it kind of looks cool, try it. And maybe you'll just surprise yourself and you'll just fall into a rabbit hole of loving even more fighting games. Just play fighting games. Just try every one that you think, oh, that kind of thing looks cool. Try it. Why not? See if it's on sale, buy it. Play fighting games. Just play fighting games and enjoy. Make friends. Get salty. Twerk on them. Twerk or be twerked. Twerk or be twerked on.
Rebel 1 action.
Exactly, and then you get 6-way mix into No, but honestly, just you know, like at the end of the day, we are a community, and it's the ability to just like this podcast would have never happened without fighting games, just straight up. So it's like we have never would have met without TikTok and fighting games. So it's just try any fighting games. You might be introduced to a community that has amazing people in it, and you might be able to meet your best friend or whatever, your rival or whatever might have you. But just play fighting games.
I can
you know?
shortcut
Like-
that. Join our Discord. Hang out with us, the T3 people. There'll be a link down below our faces where you can come hang out with us and get engaged with all the cool stuff that we do.
We're better than the rest of the fighting.
That's so funny.
All right.
Yeah.
Stray, you want to say anything before we give the wrap up?
So I think we've been negative about a lot of things, and all the
Mhm.
things deserve to have negativity thrown towards them. But I think I'm a bit more optimistic than URPG about everything, because I think we're all playing games. We're all smacking buttons. We're all playing together still, right?
No, that's
And, like,
absolutely true.
Sure, the devs, you know, they're dropping the ball on a handful of things, different things for every game, but also like the community's here. And you know what? If another good fighting game is never released, we still have Fightcade, right?
True.
This is my Melee perspective, right? We've been playing the same damn game for 20 years, right? Like there's always going to be someone to press buttons with. I think that's really so. Like even though there's a lot of problems, like we kind of talked about how like devs sort of overly depend on us fixing our own problems, but also at the same time we fixed our own problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fair.
So if we don't have a tutorial in the game, we'll help teach you. You know, if a game doesn't have rollback, we'll retroactively put it in eventually.
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually, right? So
Unless you're Dragon Ball Fighter.
yeah. So like at the same time, all these problems, maybe they're also like
Did we really need to shoot Dragon Ball Fighters again, dude? Like we were trying to go out positive,
We really
and you just
were.
shot him in
Yeah,
the
I'm
face.
sorry.
You shot
Go
him in
on,
the face.
So maybe all these problems are things worth having if it means we have the community we have. I don't know. I just want to leave it on that.
That is a really nice.
But also,
sentiment.
you should clean this sinking pile of shit on the floor.
Yeah, I cleaned the shit.
Yeah, but like, there's also a giant pile of shit on the floor. Not saying we should just leave it.
I'm not saying we should leave it, but you know what? Like,
Acknowledge it, reference it, maybe take a little sniff, and then clean it.
Oh my God.
All right.
But anyway,
Cool,
we had
yeah.
sorry, one
No,
more
go
thing.
ahead.
We had 3 successful games,
Mhm.
game releases. They all have their problems, but we had 3 back-to-back successful games from the big 3,
That is
from
true.
like the biggest IPs
Yeah.
of fighting games, right?
Mhm.
For sure.
So I think that's something that we have a lot of positive things to look forward to, and there's a lot of positive things that are already happening. So I just
Absolutely.
want to leave it on a positive note because we've been complaining for a long time, but at the same time, we've made huge strides.
For sure.
Ghoul, you want to add
Absolutely.
anything?
No, I mean, I think Stray is right. You know, as much as we criticize and complain about stuff, I do think that our community and the people who make our games have come a long way into providing better experiences for us, and I do think that should be recognized. And I think that the FGC has a lot to look forward to, and we're going to do some really cool stuff with more and more of these games coming out in, you know, playable states.
Cool.
Yeah, it's gonna be a
All
good
right.
time for sure.
So, one last thing before we go, things that we are doing in the T3 community. We are trying to get people together to play Bloody Roar. Phil, of course, who is an amazing person who has done so much for us. That is his favorite game, and he needs an opportunity to play his favorite game. So we're gonna get people together to slap some buttons and make some furries fight each other. Speaking of a community that has learned coding to make their game playable, that is that the Bloody Roar community has done that.
True.
So if you want to participate in this kind of furry face-off that we're doing, join us in the Discord. There will be furry art. And we're gonna hit some buttons together, and we hope that you'll join us.
Absolutely. Again,
It'll be a
once
good
again, the
time.
link to that Discord will be in the description.
Heckin' yeah.
Tekken, yeah. Some good ass Tekken.
So with that, we're gonna wrap it up there. I have been Ghoul. With me, my friend RPG, Stray House Pet, and Cold Fusion, and we have been T3, and we are signing off.